souls. That's why every time we roll, they be saying, fuck the Illuminati.
How cool, brothers and sisters. Welcome to AquaBrain TV. On this show, we chat positive movement through art and community with Jamil Suleman. Coming to us from Seattle, Washington, you can find Jamil at Jamil Suleman's artist page on Facebook and Instagram, Graffiti Village, and Indie Genius Media on YouTube. That's Indie Genius Media on YouTube. Jamil, how are you, man?
I'm good, brother. How are you doing?
Dude, I haven't seen you in, it's been years now.
Yeah, it has been. But I still reminisce on our times rolling around smoking weed in the woods.
Whoa, whoa.
Am I allowed to say that?
I don't know. I think you just did.
I think I just did, yeah.
You know, that's the beauty of living here. You know, it's not accessible. So, I mean, for some people, that would be a deterrent. For me, it helped me.
Yeah. Okay. Right on.
So you're in Seattle?
I'm in Seattle. Yeah.
Dude, I've been seeing Seattle's popping up in the news a lot with the violence going on.
That's an understatement. Yeah, it's been a really wild time here. You know, especially since COVID hit, city was on a pretty strict lockdown. Everything stopped. Crime just went through the roof and hasn't stopped.
Jeez.
So it's been crazy. We just elected a new mayor. Who knows how that'll go? There's like a new city council.
So the guy that was painting the sidewalks, he's done.
Guy was painting the sidewalks.
Or no, it was crosswalks. It's been a while since I.
Oh, you're talking about that guy got fired for being a child molester. Yeah. So, you know, we eat my crackers and shit. So but also, you know, the tough part is just seeing the poverty around me. Like, it's just, things have deteriorated to such an extent that there's just a lot more crime, there's a lot more drug use, there's a lot more mental health issues out on the streets. I mean, you know, suicide has skyrocketed, homelessness has skyrocketed, and that's correlated with COVID. So, you know, it's in a lot of ways, it's kind of what you make it, right?
Yeah.
But also in a lot of ways, where you were at before is a huge substance issues before COVID or mental health issues before. And if you were on the brink of that before COVID, that might have been the thing that brought you to getting through things. And COVID was the thing that just snapped them. And then a lot of that in the streets of Seattle, and it's gentrified. So I believe the residents living in Seattle proper are transplants within the last 5 years, which is insane.
Yeah.
And everything has skyrocketed. The price of everything has skyrocketed here, especially property, and so on. And, you know, Amazon is headquartered here. Microsoft is headquartered here, Google and Facebook. So the tech industry has a huge stamp on King County and specifically Seattle and the East Side where we grew up.
I think even eBay, right? eBay's there too.
eBay, I'm sure, is there. I mean, all of these kind of big digital tech companies have a huge stake in the local economy here in Western Washington. And so they're able to hire whoever they want. And those people are coming in and they're moving in. And that occurred where they literally rebuilt the city on top of it, right? So this kind of thing Seattle is used to really using the economy and finance and capital to create enclaves of wealth for some people and to create, you know, poverty and for others. And so it's really, really just stark here right now.
Man.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to your media. I mean, what you're talking, like we could do a whole show on this. I know we have limited time, so
We don't want to totally dwell on that, but I will say, I love my city. I have faith in it. I hope we see it through.
So real quick then, since we're on that, is there anything that you think would help in the immediate?
Man, I think the things that would help are actually in action, and they are helping, and that's hyper local community action. You know, one thing that we saw, especially in the beginning of COVID, is local restaurants, the small businesses, teaming together and creating, food for homeless people. And it's incredible. It's just that it wasn't sustainable for these small businesses over time, and they inevitably ran out. It's kind of heartbreaking to see that the first responders, so to speak, of the pandemic in our community was small local business and community organizations. Of course, they're like, hey, let's help each other out here. But because of the way finance and capital operates, they ran out very quickly, and then we're forced to figure it out. So it's a kind of a sick game that you watch. It's the Hunger Games. It's totally the Hunger Games, dude. I just watched the Hunger Games for the first time the other day, and I was like, oh shit. Yeah, for the first time. And I was like, oh shit, this is the Hunger Games. This is like Seattle's looking like. So anyways, I don't want to beat a dead horse or make it all a drab. Like I said, there's a lot of exciting new things coming to Seattle. It's just unfortunately exclusive in who gets access to it. And a lot of the older remnants of our Seattle culture are not really a part of that. Some of it are. And, I'm kind of, walking in both lanes here in a lot of ways. And so I get to see this kind of division, and, it is what it is. You just have to make do and do the best that you can. But just to answer your question, yeah, there's things that would definitely work, and folks have been putting them into action. It's all about mutual aid on a local level, on a neighbor to neighbor level, for sure. And that will never go away, and will always be the solution to these things.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but the government doesn't necessarily look super kindly, or hasn't in the past looked kindly on just giving food to the homeless and stuff.
Yeah, right. So I think there's all these kind of setups within city and state governments, to benefit people who make money and not people who need money.
So have you seen that that COVID is actually kind of allowed businesses now again to help, although it's a financial ruin potentially?
It depends. Yeah, no, I would say all in all, it's been horrible for the economy of small business and mom and pops, and it's been great for, look,
Amazon.
COVID to do work, corporate money interests, even on a hyper local level. And we're having to deal with, Amazon, for example, which is the big Goliath in Seattle and in the world. And it's headquartered here. Excuse me, it's headquartered here. So how does one combat that?
Right.
On a local community level, we can do the best that we can to ensure that a warehouse isn't built in our neighborhood, because if it were, it would destroy any kind of aspirations we might have to have a walkable residential environment, right? But it's not like we have affordable rent anyways, or affordable, there's affordable housing that is popping up, but a lot of it will be based off of the market value anyway. So what is affordable in Seattle? You could be making 60, 70 grand or whatever and be eligible for affordable housing. So what does that leave the person who has?
Really?
Well, I'm not saying that specifically. It determines building by building. They basically have a way to make a choice on how they're going to allow that to work. There's housing.
All right, hang on, dude. But this show is going to be actually released in February. So if you're watching this show right now, it's February. So when we're recording this show is, we're just in front of Thanksgiving right now. So, Happy
February,
everyone.
Yeah.
So like I said, which is awesome. My notes. So this is the part of the show where it goes off the rails. No. All right, let's talk about your art, man. Cause you are such an artistic talent and very, very, a lot going on in your head. And you,
that's an understatement.
You tend to lean, you were talking about community development a little bit and stuff like that. And you tend to put some of that stuff, a lot of that stuff into your lyrics and put it in a way that is enjoyable to digest. Some people don't like just hearing you not you particularly, but anybody just
Right.
browbeat them with something, but you put it
Sure.
in a way that's like, all right, hey, I just got a good beat, I got a good flow. So let's talk about your discography, right? And
Yeah.
where, first of all, where do you find your music?
You can find it on Spotify
Okay.
or streamers. So iTunes or Spotify, Amazon, any of the regular streamers. I have a SoundCloud as well.
Okay.
So I think most of my stuff, but usually people follow me on streaming. Yeah, Spotify. So you can find me in there.
So what was the first track you did?
Ever?
Like, I mean,
First rap song I ever wrote?
well,
Oh my God,
I
dude.
don't know about that.
I can tell you the first rap song I ever wrote.
Okay.
It was Jay Sizzle.
Was it?
It was called My Name is Jay Sizzle. And it was the most foul, disturbing, disgusting rap a 16-year-old brain could conceive of. Granted, I was hanging out with Kareem and Sam and, Matt and Ben and Josh, and we were, we were pranksters, and they were rap. So Matt Picora, who's of the Picora family, pizza family, they had that pizza shop in Brattle Trails, right?
New York pizza?
New York pizza,
Oh,
right?
Man.
And yeah, great stuff.
R.I.P. Andy.
That's right, man. Yes, rest in power, man. A strong, beautiful human being.
Yeah.
And so I worked. That was my first job. Was the prep cook.
Okay.
In their kitchen one summer. I think I was like 15 or 16. We lived down the street or whatever, and that's when I started hanging out more with like Kareem and Ben and Josh and Matt. Matt is their son, and Matt is super talented musician and artist and whatnot, and still is doing amazing stuff here actually in Seattle.
Cool.
And he was in a rock band, and there was a lot of rock bands around that time. So I'm talking about around 2000,
Yeah.
right? A lot of punk rock, emo, a lot of that shit, and also like, classic rock kind of, cool shit, right? But also hip hop was big in our neighborhood too. A lot of people listen to rap music, I just remember it was like always on, and I loved rap music, really did. But I used to listen to it a lot, but didn't really think much of that other than that. And so Kareem and Matt start rapping for fun, just goofing off, right? And Kareem is I don't know, I don't know if I'm allowed to say his name even. He might get mad at me for doing this, but his brother was listening to a lot of like Brother Lynch.
Oh yeah.
And like really graphic horrorcore rap, like just the most just, when you're a kid, you listen to this crazy stuff, right?
I know.
And so like Kareem's brother was listening to it, and Kareem heard it and thought it was hilarious because it was so graphic and insane, right? So he started writing similar kind of noxic, just gross raps, right? And they were writing it and kind of goofing off, and I'd go over there and we'd laugh about it or whatever, and they're like, you should write one, right? And I remember going home and lying in bed, and the rap song just like appeared in my head,
Oh, wow.
The lyrics just appeared in my head. And I was listening to a lot of Snoop back then as well. Kid Rock was big, so like all of these like really like foul mouth lyricists were in the mainstream, and then you had Brother Lynch and all that, and I was just like, where I used to love Biggie. That was the rapper who I was like, man, his voice is just amazing,
His flow.
His flow. I was just like, I'm hypnotized by. When I was 13, actually, what happened was when I was 13, I had a family reunion, right? So this before all this. One summer we had a family reunion. My older cousin came from Vegas, and she was really into rap and all that. And Biggie was. This is '97, so I think Biggie just died, right? And
Wikipedia.
Yeah, well, no,
Go to
Biggie
Wikipedia.
died in '97. I know that because Pac died in '96. And so, anyways, she had Hypnotized. Oh yeah, Hypnotized came out, right? So she had Hypnotized, a song Hypnotized, right? And I listened to that CD a CD, by the way, everybody, is this old piece of metal that plays music on it, like a record, that we used to use. Um, so I looped that song and I went to bed, and I had it playing in the CD player all night. And I woke up and I was spitting the lyrics to hypnotize. I was like, oh, sicker than the average, Papa Twist, Capital Instinct, you know, and I could rap it. And I remember my cousins being like, oh my God, you're actually doing it, right? So I was like, oh, I could kind of do this. So I just listened to a lot of rap, and then, you know, fast forward to when these guys are goofing off. And so I'm starting to write a rap for fun, right? And it's all goofy and kind of disgusting and foul and juvenile or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh my God, that's hilarious. Let's start a rap group. So we started a rap group called The Freak Show. And we started doing those little basement parties, you know, that were always popping on the east side, right? So like all those little punk rock shows. And the first show we did, there was a punk rock show, and they're just like, oh yeah, let them rap at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
And I think like there was 2 or 3 people there when we were rapping, but like, because we were early, right? We were the first act or whatever. But like the 3 brown kids and like, you know, the suburbs rapping or whatever. And so it was just like awkward, but I'm rapping and whatnot, and Kareem is looking at me when I'm rapping, like, and then he talks to me later on. He's like, dude, you can actually rap, like legit, like this isn't like a joke, like you can actually rap. And I'm like, word. So we start writing more rap songs. The school finds out. All of a sudden, it's all the kids in school are loving it, right? So the next little party, right?
And was that Rose Hill? No, that wasn't Rose.
No, this is Lake Washington High School. Yeah, L-Dub.
Sorry.
So so the next party,
16. You
which
said
is
16.
Like 16, yeah. So the next party, probably like maybe a month or 2 after that, right?
Yeah.
Everybody came just for us. Like basically it was packed.
Nice.
And they were like, you're the rappers, right? And we were like, oh shit. So we rapped and killed it. It was fucking hilarious. It was one of the most incredible experiences as a performer I've ever had.
And did
was
anybody
in that
shoot
basement.
That was like pre.
I don't think so. This is like 99, 2000 or some shit.
Yeah, that was
like
pre,
2000.
like everybody having a cell phone.
Oh yeah, no, there ain't no phones, dude. Like, dude, we were all analog, baby. This shit was old school, you know. But it was the energy was just like, whoa, dude. Like people were sitting on the speakers and people were like crammed outside. I was like, this is insane.
Yeah.
And then what happened after that is we started really building our rep. And then we did a show at the teen center, right?
Yeah.
And it was a battle of down in Kirkland. It was the battle of the bands. And literally I would say, I mean, I don't know, but we came out really, you know, me and Kareem were all, at this point, we were totally into it. I bought a Cadillac, you know, I was like, this is, you know, Sam had the Mohawk, you know, Carl was DJing. I had the baby doll. It was all over the place. And the crowd was packed for us. That's and awesome. Just cheering. And I remember, because we're still rapping this foul lyrics, right? And I remember looking at the PE teacher or whoever who was there, because they had to, like, you know, supervise it. And, you know, goddamn well, they weren't going to have us say any of those things. But the crowd was so lit. I remember looking at the PE teacher, and he was just like, you got it, you know? And I was just like, wow, you're going to really let me do this? I was like, oh man, foul mouth as hell. It was like NWA, you know? It was like, and I think the issue too was like for him and I, especially being the identities that we had in the suburbs, we're so used to hearing racist jokes our way, right?
Oh, come on.
That were like,
really?
all the fucking time, I mean, but you know, you get used to it, right? You're just like, okay, this is what it's like.
Well, I mean, there's
in this environment.
There's a preppy.
Yeah, it's the preppy kid, stuff. You know? I mean, you're also talking about 20 years ago, so people's values have changed a lot. But I mean, the way we looked at it,
of people's feelings,
awareness is totally changed. But back then it was not, and it still is changing, right? We're not totally where we all want to be. But I remember when we were writing our raps, and it was so offensive, and being like, yeah, but how are you going to tell me not to be offensive? Like, you know, I'm not even doing anything, and you're offending me just because of how I look or, you know, where I come from. So I'm going to say whatever I want to say. And the irony in that is that people related with that. So I think on a even despite what we were saying verbally, it wasn't really that wasn't really what was being communicated. I think what was really being communicated and what young people and the kids around us at the time connected with was a group of kids who were just like, we're going to be us regardless, you know, we don't care about what people say. And that's what young people connect with. And so, man, I'm so glad that you reminded me of that story. That I needed to recall that, because man, I haven't rapped in a long time. I have not rapped in a fucking long time.
You need to get back to it.
I mean, stage shows and all that have been closed anyways for like, you know, a couple years now. So it's like not everywhere, and it's coming back, but at the same time, it's like, wow, dude, like, you know, I'm 37 now, right? Rapping that stuff. And so it's just interesting to look back on that and say, wow, like that's what it feels like to be raw talent. And that's how people connect with it 20 years later, and all this stuff happens. Like, how do you re-harness that raw talent? You've been kind of jaded a bit. You've gone through some things and you're wiser, but you're also not as naive, and so you're not as eager to just do some silly shit that might actually work out.
Right.
So
then speaking of silly shit, then you wrote the Fuck Illuminati song.
Oh my God. You remember that song?
I do. I think I know.
Do you have that beat?
Oh, dude, no, I wish I did.
Man, if you had that beat, I made that beat.
Did you?
I did. Yeah, that song never came out, first of all. The Fuck Illuminati song never came out. That's one of the dopest songs I've ever wrote. But I will say that the lyrics for that song are now in a song I made in 2012 called Song for Consciousness. So check out Song for Consciousness. That's on my streamer. That a lot of those lyrics was Fuck Illuminati, the Fuck Illuminati song. Yeah.
So then, I mean, I don't know how much you want to say about that, like, period, the Illuminati period. The
Illuminati. I was getting really political back then. I was really kind of going into conspiracy theories, and I just started college at UW, and I was starting to read, and I was reading Malcolm, and I was reading, you know, a lot of social justice stuff and American history and things like that. And I was like, oh,
like old school, original social justice stuff, right?
Right. Not the, I guess, right. So yeah, there is the issue, right, that people have with the kind of new woke, quote unquote, woke era social justice wars, which is kind of unfortunate, because a lot of that language that is currently being used in the mainstream to support a cause or another, it comes from real struggle. It comes from real oppression. It comes from a history of real oppression that's still going on to this day. And it's unfortunate that, you know, MSNBC or CNN is just going to use it to promote their media channel and not really help what the fuck they're talking about, you know, and which confuses people too, because then people think that MSNBC and CNN are actually speaking on behalf of the oppressed, and they are not. You know, they are actually speaking on behalf of the corporations, just like Fox News, just like they all are. I mean, it's the same. And so Fuck Illuminati, just to bring it back to that song came out of me realizing and seeing all of those kind of things. I was like, oh man, these cats are tricking us. Now, at the time, I put it in the framework of Illuminati, which I'm sure everybody kind of knows that whole concept, the secret society or nefarious, you know, deep state. And I'm not here to say, you know, yes or no if that exists or not. That's rather not here or there. But the kind of contrived and planned actions of individuals and moneyed interests to keep people subjugated to oppression is certainly a thing. And everybody knows that. And if you're not seeing that during COVID, I mean, you know, you must have you must be in a cave. Yeah, I mean, you know, it's more blatant now than ever. It's scary, actually, how it's, and just to bring it back to what I was speaking to you earlier about what's going on in my neighborhood, just a shit ton of violence and all that. We're facing the brunt of those policies, right? Our neighborhoods get hit first. Yeah, it's unfortunate, man. So it's still fuck Illuminati, basically. But, you know, it's more focused, and it's more kind of how do I put it? I'm kind of reaching for the word. It's more polished and understanding. You know, it's more sophisticated and nuanced on how I see things operate. I don't think it's one monolithic group that's doing everything from the top, but I do think there's structures and entities and systems in place that allow a few groups of very affluent individuals who are all within their own network to you know, to pimp us all, you know.
Right. I think you made a good point. I think it's the and I'm starting to think more and more about how it's really probably the system that is the problem.
That's right.
It's everything.
Which let me ask you this though, because I want to kind of piggyback off this and ask you, if the system is the issue, right? Yeah. And a system is a byproduct of the collective consciousness of a group of people, then what really is the problem? Right. And so that's why that song changed from being called Fuck Illuminati to Song for Consciousness, because I realized that the issue is not this group outside of us. The issue is actually our collective consciousness. Because if we were more aware, more cognizant, more courageous in claiming our spiritual identity of who we really are in this world, then we wouldn't allow this to occur. Right.
Well, I think spirituality is definitely like the key to this, you know. So I want to
I dress up like Jesus.
All right, okay, we can go there, but I was going to talk about Ego's Last Stand.
Yeah, let's talk about Ego's Last Stand.
So was that kind of like the next evolution out of that period? Was there anything else in that fuck Illuminati?
Man, yeah. So I went to college and I studied a lot of poli-sci and a lot of American history, and I started doing a lot of activism and a lot of community organizing work. And I stopped writing rap songs and I started writing more spoken word.
Okay.
And I was performing a lot of that in my community at UW, University of Washington, where I was a student and an organizer, and kind of conveying how I felt through spoken word, which was performative. It's, you know, audience and a crowd, and it wasn't necessarily just writing songs. I would still write songs. And
do you have the bongo?
I didn't have, sometimes I did. Sometimes I had the bongo. Matter of fact, me and my boy Ramon, we had this little duo called Rhythm and Rhyme that we kind of made up.
That's
and I'd rap and he'd have the thing.
Nice.
Yeah, and so a lot of the songs would end up in spoken word, which is the same. It's still poetry, right?
Yeah.
But it was really a lot more sophisticated. So I kind of graduated from the whole concept of, you know, just rap for fun and goofy stuff to being able to convey a message. You know, because when I realized that I could actually rap and not just entertain or, you know, whatever, but had the skill set. And admiring so many rappers. This is when my favorite rapper started to become Tupac, actually.
Okay.
So I started really realizing, you know, Tupac being the son of a Panther, or coming from the Black Panther Party, his political identity, you know, all the things that he was saying, the power and impact that he had. And then I got to travel to South Africa in college in 2007. Oh, wow. Yeah, as part of study abroad. And, you know, my for people who don't know, my family's background is South Asian, Indian, and Pakistani. But they moved to East Africa probably 200 years ago. They migrated there. So most of my relatives are actually born and raised in Africa. So when I went to South Africa, this is actually the country where my father's biological mother was born. So there was a real strong energy and I
don't think I ever knew that. I don't think I ever knew that, Jamil.
Yeah, well, I barely found out myself. So when I got down there, I was like, oh man, this is a spiritual experience, you know?
Yeah.
To be connected to this land where I know my grandmother was born and her family walked and whatnot.
So what was your impression of going?
It was incredible. I mean, you know, the thing was, I was really into activism and organizing through hip hop back then. So I came on a scholarship trying to get poems for kids. And we were doing pen pal poetry. So I got some poems from kids in West Seattle, and I brought them down to the township in Cape Town. And so we're trading poetry, and yeah, it was a really beautiful project. Yeah. And so I'm out there every day, man. I was like, fuck school. I'm out there just in the township, kicking it with people. We organized events. We would, you know, hang out. You know, we're in college, so we'd party out there, and we really did our own thing. And I remember seeing Tupac everywhere.
Oh, really?
Tupac bigger than Jesus Christ in the third world.
Wow.
You know, yeah, absolutely. Tupac, especially for young people, especially for young, you know, people of color in South Africa and other areas. Like, yeah, Tupac is a symbol of cultural resistance and social and power for them.
Wow.
So that even more amplified my admiration for what he represented. So when I came back and I graduated from college, I became a social worker quite quickly, and I started working pretty tough job. Kids in juvenile detention,
Yeah.
who they had to have a record, and I myself was 23. Most of my clients were like 17, 16, pretty close of age.
Yeah.
So I did that job for about a year and a half and really saw the reality. This is right after the recession. And after Obama gets elected. So, '08. So you're seeing like this stark thing where we have a black president, but you're in an economic recession. So, you know, it's this really interesting dynamic. And I'm rolling around seeing poverty and gang warfare and police brutality play out, and the school to prison pipeline and all that play out in front of me. And I'm just like, man, this is crazy. This is like real life shit, you know? And so inevitably I left the job, but while I was the tail end last like half a year of that job, I started writing an album, which is my first album, which is The Eagle's Last Stand. And at that time I was reading a lot of spirit. So before I got that job, actually, I should probably mention this. Before I got that job, I graduated in '07, right?
Okay.
And around that time I started to have like a real interesting spiritual experience. I don't know how to put it, a transformation. I was really young and I started to, they say I went completely sober. I started it kind of almost came out of nowhere. It was just like this urge to do it. I started meditating constantly. I started to read a lot of deep spiritual works. You know, Eckhart Tolle's Power of Now was a huge one for me. And then I went on my first Vipassana sit, which is a 10-day silent meditation retreat, where it was the most transformational thing I've done. One of the most transformational things I've done. I've done it a few times since. And I highly suggest it to people who have the capacity to take 10 days and be with themselves. You know, you can't read or write or do exercise. You literally are observing your thoughts and being with yourself. And so a lot of like deeper intuitive knowledge was coming out. This knowledge of self was coming out. And right after that, I go right into doing this really crazy job as a social worker, seeing the systems play out. So I'm teaching my youth in jail meditate, like breathing meditation, so they calm down, you know, because they're locked up and it's crazy in juvie, right? And these are Black and brown kids. They're getting thrown around and, you know, tossed around. So I'm teaching them, you know, some basic breathing meditations, things that I'm just learned a year ago. And so this quick transformation occurred. And that's when an album started to come into my mind, in my brain. And this was The Eagle's Last Stand. And it was really kind of like this spiritual treatise of it goes in a story, and you kind of follow me as I talk about, you know, working my job and understanding life, or, you know, dating or getting high or whatever a 22 or 3-year-old goes through or whatever. But eventually it kind of comes to this point where like I have to just be silent under this tree, and there's a song called Meditation Music that kind of is an expression of how I just have to let it all go. And then when I do, a newer message gets told, right? And that's when I quit my job, because I was like, there's something deeper that must be done. And then I got a one-way ticket to Hawaii, went to the Big Island, landed on a farm in the middle of nowhere that was suggested to me by a friend of mine in the capoeira school I was in, and spent like half a year in this time warp in Hawaii, learning how to grow food, and also just connecting with a lot of indigenous wisdom of the islands.
Wow, I bet it's amazing.
It was incredible. It was literally it was like a spirit quest kind of a thing. It really was. Like there was all these, I met incredible people that I still talk to this day. I felt like I channeled kind of ideas that were important, that I still talk about, still the most important things that I talk about to this day. And most of that being, you know, the need for us to have sustainable food where we are, to build food resiliency locally where we are, because I noticed then, and I started to talk to people then, like, oh, this system is collapsing. You know, we're in a collapsing society as far as how this current system is going, because it's overshoot, right? We used all the stuff. We did it too quickly, and now it's, you know, the bubble got to pop, right? And so you can, when you leave the United States, especially the lower 48, even if you're on Hawaii and you're watching it, because Hawaii is the United States, but it's not. It's its own nation, and it's the most isolated island chain in the world, if I'm not mistaken. So
well, there's some
it's got
weird,
its own
like,
culture.
there's some weird you know,
There's some
there's some
deep
weird, you
history,
know, about
deep
how it became a
history.
state, and yeah,
Oh yeah, oh
I don't
yeah.
want
You
to
already know,
go into
man.
all that, but
Don't get into dole
yeah.
fruit, and you know. But anyways, yeah, yeah, the deep history there. And so looking at, you know, I'm looking at the lower 48, i.e. the United States, from that perspective. And as I'm learning how to grow food and getting all this indigenous wisdom from locals there and other folks there, and they're like, yeah, man, that shit is about to go, you know. So I came back kind of like on a mission to spread the kind of ideas of something that I was calling Graffiti Village, which has been kind of a main focus for me since then, underlying kind of motivation for me, which is this whole concept of, you know, people where they're at locally, building community and building sovereignty, building gardens, and really being able to feed themselves outside of the purview of the industrial society that we live in, or the capitalist model that we live in. So what does it look like when we don't need so much of this teched out technocracy, this kind of highly consumerist society that we live in? What does it look like when we slow down, localize, almost go for a degrowth model? And
that's very
really,
much, that is very much I, right? And not we, right? So you're talking about getting back more to the we and us.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, because if everybody in the world lived with an I consciousness, you need 20 planets, right? Because everybody wants all the stuff, because I want what I want, right?
Yeah.
But if it is a we, you know, and they kind of refer to this as Ubuntu in Swahili. If there is a we, there's, you know, we're sharing together, we're operating together, like we have to work together. There is no I without the we, is essentially the concept there. You know, we make this, we're together. So that is what will, to me, like on a more spiritual level, that is what will last through what I think, and I and a lot of other people are starting to notice, is the kind of the decline of this society, right? So what's gonna grow out of the rubble or the compost of this way of life? Well, it's going to be kind of the old way of life that worked before this way of life, right? Which has always been small, local, sustainable communities of people who care about each other and care for their environment. You know, we have to make nature the center of what we're doing, not what we use to do what we're doing, right? So that really inspired me coming back from that trip, and so I came back to Seattle. And so anyways, I talked a lot about the Eagles' Last Stand, is kind of mixed up in there a little bit, but that's been my journey since.
And then I know that you got into filmmaking, and there's a video right now, one of your latest projects. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that part of your journey?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess I'll pick up where I left off a little bit, right? So
is there anything in between that Eagles Last? I'm sure there's like,
yeah, totally. So I came back from Hawaii, right? And the Eagles' Last Stand I put out before I left.
Okay.
So when I came back, I was going to make another album. I was prepared to kind of make another album. And then I got a job as an after school teacher. And that pretty much took my life that occupied most of my life's energy for the next 2 to 3 years, which was amazing. It was probably the most important work I've ever done, you know, is working with those kids. So I was working with middle school age kids in South Seattle, most of them immigrant refugee kids, And it was a blast. I learned so much about myself and what skills I have to offer, as well as what skills others have to offer, and how you can get young people to really open up and stuff. And so that changed a lot of my perspective, because I realized that, working with young people is really the purpose of human existence, because they are the future, right?
Right.
Um,
We get them
and
before they're 7, right? What is it?
that's right. That's what
was
they
it
say.
that
They
the
say, I believe it, you show me, I don't know what the quote is, the
it wa-
Jehovah's.
gosh, I want to say it was some like
You give me the man
Jesuit
before he's
priest or
you give me
something
the child before he's 7, and I'll give you the man.
or something. Yeah,
That's what they said. Yeah. So essentially, the first 7 years are so pivotal in your development, right? But even until you're 20, you're still very malleable. 18, 20, your brain is still.
And
So
watch that
working with
too.
those.
Watch that too. I don't mean to interrupt you, but watch that, because there's a huge push now for earlier and earlier education, and
Oh yeah.
I'm not sure if that's necessarily the best for our future collectively. But
No, well, not only just that, but it's like, who's dictating this education? What's the agenda, so to speak, of
right,
this curriculum, right? That's not necessarily reflective of everyone's values, and kind of can benefit, again, the small group of
yeah,
people. So yeah, and I saw, my youth go through a lot of that, being indoctrinated with this ridiculous stuff in their public schools. And so, and I'm talking mostly of like a very white centered Western narrative, right? So the history is coming from that perspective, and what is a little immigrant youth or refugee child who comes from Vietnam or comes from Somalia, how are they going to relate to that, right?
yeah, that yeah,
So it's there's a lot of that still going on. Yeah, they plant it early. But all I say is that working with kids is important. Like, working with young people is that's gardening too. That's gardening for humanity, right? Like,
yeah.
what
I
are the
agree.
seeds that we're planting? So I would take those kids to do gardening and all that, and they would
Oh,
hate me
nice.
about it, because they didn't
Yeah,
want to get
they
in the
don't want to
dirt
do
and the
that.
mud. And but after a while, you know they opened up, and they started having more fun, and they started seeing it as, we do this together.
Yeah.
And so that's what really kind of motivated me.
Did they get to see
And
the return on their investment, so to speak?
I hope so. I hope so.
I mean,
They're
as far
they're
as like, did they see? I mean,
Oh, the
was it just?
vegetables and stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, were
yeah.
they?
Yeah, no, they would plant some stuff and they'd sprout, and yeah, they would nurture life. And I think they saw the benefit of that.
Huge.
We have little plants in our room and stuff like that. So, like, yeah, it's those little things do really count, because for a kid who's 7 or 10 or 8, or 12 or whatever, and they're in school all day, and it's the bell and then another room and the bell and another room and the bell and another, they finally get to be in a room, and they get to listen to music, and they get to plant something and get a snack. And it's a different environment that we're trying to cultivate for them, so they actually
That's great.
enjoy what they're learning. So that was important. And around then, I wrote Curry in a Hurry, the
Okay.
song,
Yeah.
while
Yeah.
I was teaching. And it was so funny that I was like, oh man, I got to make a music video for this. So we did, and it was a great project. And we put it out, and people really, really loved it. And the kids loved it. And I was like, what? I can make my kids like what I do. I was like, this is amazing. So I did more rap songs with them, and they loved doing it. Matter of fact, we did rap songs with the boys too.
Oh, cool.
Um, yeah, it was funny. It was fun. And they're so cute. They're like really young, and they're trying to be rap stars. With, instead of having a champagne bottle, they got like the apple cider bottle and whatever. It's like,
That's
okay.
awesome.
So yeah, it was fun. And I realized, I was like, man, I can do both. Like, I can work with the community, and I can make really successful art. And Curry in a Hurry is probably my most successful song, probably still. Yeah, in 2016, me and 3 of my friends, the 4 of us left, and we went down Seattle, down south through Oregon and California, looped through Mexico and New Mexico and Arizona, and went up to Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, up into Canada to Banff, and
Oh,
Jasper, and then came down to Idaho, Coeur d'Alene, and through Spokane, then went up to Vancouver, and then came back to Seattle. And we did this tour called the Graffiti Village Tour. And the whole concept was we were rapping. We were also meeting with folks that we knew on the res, like a lot of indigenous reservations, because we wanted to really learn about some of the things that we were still talking about, growing food. You know, what are the indigenous, we learned a lot about indigenous medicine, but also the wisdom of the prophecies of indigenous peoples. And, you know, we'd sit and share story with them, and they were very
nice.
They're very accommodating and open the door to us, you know. And I feel like we came with the right vibration where they recognized that we were on a positive wavelength, and they were like, yeah, man, like, you're right, you know, like, or actually they were saying, we're right, you know, we've been telling everyone for a long time that, you know, don't build that tower too high, it'll come smashing down. And so we really kind of recultivated the passion and the interest for local community again, you know. So we did everything from rapping to meeting folks in the cities, meeting folks in the res. We camped a bunch. We hit every national park, Yellowstone, Redwoods, you name it, Jasper, Glacier. I mean, all the most Banff. I mean, the most amazing camping trip probably ever.
Banff is
incredible. Yeah. So we were gone for 2 months, and then when I came back, Donald Trump became got elected as the president.
Yeah.
And shortly after that, a lot of protests started to go down all over the place.
Yeah, the
polarization. And that's when a lot of polarization, and that's when the Jesus character kind of came out of the closet for me, because my hair was really long and my beard was long, and people were like, "Oh man, you kind of look like Jesus," right?
And you were like,
and a lot of my activists and organizer friends, we would go to the city council meetings and we would ask for things that we needed in our community. Especially for me, I would always ask for things from my after school program. I was like, man, let me get a lamp for the reading room. And they would never listen to me. They would never listen to me. They would kind of be like, whatever. And so one day I just dressed up like Jesus and did the whole bit at the city council meeting, and it went fucking viral.
Right.
And now everywhere I go in Seattle, it doesn't matter where, I could be wearing a hat with a hoodie on, people will be Jesus, yelling Jesus at me and all that, which I love, but also I'm like, I don't know about that right now. It's a little hot. But that really came out and all of a sudden put me on the map, so to speak. And what happened is that I started reading a lot about Jesus, because I said, I better be responsible if I'm going to play this role, not to just mock this man.
Right.
And the reason why I even went to the city council was I was basically saying things that I think Jesus would say, you know, like help the homeless and fund the schools, and, follow the wisdom of indigenous people, and so on and so forth. And so what happened was, because it was funny, people were actually receptive to it. I started to really remember that humor is such a way to break down the armor that we put on with each other. And so I utilized that project to really learn more about who I am, and more about my community, and more about what art can do if it's prolific, profound, comedic, and has an actual plan behind it. So I utilized that to do Josh Day. And Josh Day was a Christmas party, which I called Josh Day, which was Josh was how I called the Jesus character. Josh being short for Joshua, and Christ's name supposedly being Yeshua, which would have been Joshua if there was J's in Aramaic. So I kind of shortened it, and I was like, yeah, call me Josh. And it made it all more funny and more buddy Christ-like.
Right.
And so we did Josh Day.
Still getting a message out, right?
If anything, it got the message out even more effectively.
Yeah.
So we did Josh Day, and we would do these Christmas parties where we'd do a bunch of music, and we'd give away clothes and food to anybody who came, and we'd get folks from the homeless community to come down and celebrate with us. And it wasn't just a charity event. You know, we weren't giving to poor people, quote unquote, on Christmas Day.
Right.
No, we were creating a field of energy that anybody could come into and be equal in, right? And celebrate in.
Incredible. Yeah.
So everyone was giving. I remember sitting there and seeing a woman who I know is homeless, just enjoying the party and all this and that. And I know there was a resident who had a little baby girl, and there's a pile of gifts and presents in one corner, and the homeless woman grabs the present that she likes and she gives it to the baby girl. And I remember thinking to myself, like, the first thing this homeless woman does when she sees extra stuff is she starts to give it away.
Yeah.
And that's like the opposite of what rich people do, right?
Right,
They see all this stuff and they see a poor person have one thing and they want to take that one thing. And it's just, it was an eye opener to me. It really like, it was special. Those were really special times and really special projects and events, because it was way beyond me dressing up like Jesus. It was us all learning about the power of just giving,
Community.
you know?
Community.
Yeah. And community.
Being
Yeah.
humble.
And so that put me on the map. And then after that, I started to get more into film, and a friend of mine moved back up from LA, and he was in the film industry down in LA, and we decided to create a company together. And actually the first thing that we did was the tour, the Graffiti Village tour. And then we opened up Indie Genius Media, our small studio here, and we've been working ever since. And now we're looking into doing more television and film work. So right now I've been script writing for the past 2.5 years.
Wow.
I'd say. So Curry in a Hurry, the song, is now kind of being formatted to be like a sitcom.
Nice.
And it's really funny, and we're working on trying to get some kind of teaser and treatment material of making it either a sitcom or a movie, like maybe a feature. And we're excited about that. So the way I kind of see it all moving forward is I see a lot of my old, I mean, this whole conversation has been a Jamil Suleman History Channel.
Yeah.
So I appreciate it, because if I ever forget, I can just watch this. But it's like kind of interesting, because all of my, well, we all are, man. And I appreciate you recognizing that. And also hosting this and having this as a way for people to speak about their story and share it with others and give value to others. But yeah, man, I see myself now doing film and media at age 37, now about to turn 38. Just utilizing all of my old, ever since rapping from the Freak Show to, just doing spoken word or doing community work, living in Hawaii, doing the youth work, making music, doing Curry in a Hurry, dressing up like Jesus, the whole nine is all coming into this ability for me to now say, okay, I've lived a bunch of cool stuff and I've learned a lot, and now I can write it in a really fun story that I can communicate for me to my friends and family, and let's see where it goes. So that's where I'm at right now. And, at the same time I was going to say, just in the same time on a day-to-day, like I'm saying, we're dealing with what we're dealing with here in Seattle, which is like, on one level, I'm kind of cultivating all this really great art and all of that, which I really love and appreciate. On the other side, it's like surviving, just trying for survival around here. So, I hope for the best. I do think we're heading in the right direction, and I feel confident that my art is going to get me where I need to go, so I can amplify the voices and the causes that I want to.
Nice. Well, I would definitely love to have you back on and go more into like the garden stuff. And you got just a wealth of knowledge. So I did want to just real quickly bring up the new video that you just sent me. And this is the most recent project. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
This is the most recent project. It's a music video called Hardaway that I filmed in the woods that we grew up next to. Actually, I found out I grew up near those woods pretty much my whole life. So it was cool to visit there. But yeah, that's off of a little EP or a tape that I made called C.A.T.S 2. And so we filmed that earlier this year, I think.
Yeah.
Or I guess if you're watching in February, early in January of 2021. And yeah, it's a really a dope song that I feel is an ode to a lot of the things that Indigenous folks and other community organizers, and all the history I read about represent to me, you know, and a lot of that comes down to just respecting nature. So I have a quote from Winona LaDuke, I'm sorry, in there. She's a native activist from Minnesota, I think, which is where I was born.
Oh.
And she speaks really passionately about this time that we're all in and how indigenous folks have been, you know, warning us, you know, that, you know, you overbuild, you overshoot, you create all of this inequity and, you know, rape nature, you know, you're not heading in the right direction. So, you know, that's where that song is. And I feel like that's where my hope for humanity lies, is in us kind of waking up into what those lessons really mean for us.
That's awesome. Jamil.
Yeah.
I got real quick, I got a couple of bonus questions.
Yeah, hit me.
I just want to do these off the top of the dome since I don't have my
Do it.
notes. All right. So what is a skill that you want to learn but haven't yet?
Ooh, I mean, the first thing that came to my mind is like survival training. Like I've learned some things like camping and stuff like that, but I would like to learn like some hard, just for me, just to know, like some hardcore survival training shit. Like how would I live in the woods with nothing but a knife?
Killer. All right.
Yeah.
So if you were in a tribe community, what would you offer the tribe?
Nude dancing. And comedy, probably a mixture of the two. Maybe comedy in the form of nude dancing. No, I would say what I would offer, it depends on what we're at, what we're doing. I would say some inspiration, you know, hopefully some ideas about how we can live sustainably together, and some hands, man. I'm ready to get to work. You know, let's do something.
What are say 3 key things that you would expect other members of the tribe to do or contribute?
Nude dancing for sure. Number 1. No. Three key. I would say first, come with a positive attitude. You know, let's come with a constructive attitude. That's number 1, regardless. Number 2, be open-minded. Right? Let's you know, see what we can do together, and things might change, and we might need you or us and me in a different capacity than we thought. So be open-minded. And number 3 is have a passion to learn and to share. So if you have skills, you know, and that could be, you know, I think some of the most important skills, just to get more technical about it, are going to be learning how to grow your own food, learning how to build shelter, learning how to use wildlife as medicine, or basically healing modalities, or even, you know, more complicated forms of healthcare. You know, music and culture is huge. I mean, this is more than 3, but yeah.
All right. So last one. If the system, now we were talking about this, if the system that we're all dependent on collapses tomorrow, what is the first thing you're going to do?
Wow. First thing I'd do is I'd check in with my parents and my brother, make sure they're good. We're actually working on getting our go bags, right? So let's say we have 4 go bags, right? 4 or 5 go bags or so. I would say that's tough because I don't anticipate the system just imploding in one day. I think it's going to be a protracted decline.
Yeah.
Where you are but there are going to be moments of like shock, system shock, right? And so I think when it comes to that, you always have to go to community. You always have to go to community. You're not going to survive on your own. You can try and be the guy with the gun and the beans in the mountains, but you're probably going to be the first target for the gangs of the people who don't have the guns and the beans, you know, or they have the guns but not the beans.
Right.
So, and you're just one guy. So guess what? That's not, so I think community, number 1, and yeah, community is how people are going to make it through this time.
Jamil, you've been an awesome guest, man. I hope
man,
to
brother,
have you on again.
Thank you for even inviting me, having me join. It's good to see you again. All my best to the family.
Yours as well.
Thank you, brother.
Thanks for joining us on AquaBrain TV. Check us out at Brain Aqua. That's how you subscribe to us. This is that Indie Genius Media. This is a video we think you'll like. And this is that music video we were talking about.